When Dr. Richardson told 62-year-old Margaret Hayes she needed a 40,000 heart surgery or she'd die within weeks, he never mentioned any alternatives because expensive procedures bring more profit than honest conversations. He was certain he'd cornered the retired librarian, leaving her no choice but to drown in impossible debt or accept her fate. But a chance call from an old friend in a simple tea recipe made from 4 ingredients turned everything upside down. What medicine deemed impossible happened in just 2 months. Just listen to how shocking the twist in this drama became, and why justice ultimately prevailed, leaving the doctor staring at her scan results in complete disbelief. Margaret Hayes sat in the examination room, her fingers gripping the armrests until her knuckles turned white. The fluorescent lights hummed above her as Dr. Richardson pointed to the screen, showing her arterial scan. The dark shadows cutting through the images made her stomach drop. "Your arteries are 87 blocked, Margaret." His voice was clinical, detached, as if he had delivered this news 1,000 times before. "We need to schedule surgery within 2 weeks, or you're looking at a major cardiac event." Margaret felt her breath catch. A major cardiac event. He meant a heart attack. He meant death. But he hid behind medical terminology, keeping his distance from the reality of what he was telling her. She had known something was wrong for months. The chest pain that woke her at night, the exhaustion that made climbing stairs feel impossible, the way her heart would race unexpectedly, leaving her dizzy and gasping. Margaret was 62, a retired librarian who had spent 40 years surrounded by books and quiet conversations. She had always believed she was careful about her health. She didn't smoke. She rarely drank. She took walks when the weather was nice, but life had caught up with her anyway. The stress of caring for her dying husband, the sleepless nights, the frozen dinners she ate alone because cooking felt impossible, the genetics inherited from her father, who had died of a heart attack at 65. "Surgery?" The word barely escaped her lips, her voice breaking. Dr. Richardson glanced at his folder, his expression practiced and neutral. "Yes, bypass surgery. It's the only option at this stage." Margaret's mind raced. Surgery meant hospitals, anesthesia, recovery, vulnerability. But worse than her fear of the procedure was the question forming in her mind, the one she didn't want to ask because she already knew the answer would destroy her. "How much will that cost?" Dr. Richardson shifted slightly, the only sign that he disliked this part of the conversation. "With your insurance, you're still looking at around $40,000 out of pocket, plus recovery time, which could be 6 to 8 weeks, medications, follow-up appointments, possible complications." The words became a dull roar. $40,000. Margaret felt the room tilt, the walls closing in. She gripped the armrest harder, fighting the dizziness. She lived on a fixed income, her late husband's modest pension and her small retirement fund. Every month was a careful balancing act of bills and groceries. She had $1,700 in her checking account. Her savings, the ones she and Harold had built over 30 years, had been emptied 3 years ago to pay for his funeral and medical bills. $40,000 might as well have been $40 million. She had no family to turn to, no children. Her sister lived in Australia and they barely spoke. Her closest friends were other retirees on tight budgets, struggling just like her. I need to think about this." Margaret pushed herself up, her legs trembling. The room swayed. She grabbed the desk edge to steady herself. Dr. Richardson's expression hardened, his jaw tight. "Mrs. Hayes, you don't have time to think. Your condition is critical. If you wait, you might not get another chance." The words hit like a slap. No time to think, no options, no choices, just a deadline and a price she couldn't afford, and a future being decided without her consent. Margaret looked at Dr. Richardson, at his expensive watch and perfectly pressed coat, and felt something break inside her. He didn't understand. He couldn't. To him, she was just another patient, another file, another appointment. He would go home to his comfortable house, have dinner with his family, sleep soundly without worrying about paying for his next meal. "Thank you for your time, doctor." Her voice came out steadier than expected, though her hands still shook as she picked up her purse. "Mrs. Hayes, please." But she was already at the door. She couldn't stay another second, couldn't breathe the recycled air, or look at the scans showing her death lurking in the shadows of her own body. She pushed through and walked past the reception desk where a young woman scheduled appointments for people who could afford them. The automatic doors slid open. Margaret stepped into the October afternoon. The sun was shining, the leaves turning gold and red. The world continued moving around her. People walking, cars driving, life carrying on as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Margaret reached her car and collapsed inside. The tears came immediately, overwhelming and unstoppable. Her whole body shook with grief and fear and rage at the unfairness of it all. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and let herself break down completely. She couldn't afford the surgery. She couldn't save herself. And she couldn't accept that this was how her life would end, alone and helpless, drowning in impossible debt or dying from a heart that was giving up on her. The following weeks felt endless. Margaret woke each morning with the same crushing weight on her chest, both physical and emotional. She had left Dr. Richardson's office with no plan, no money, and no hope. She turned to the internet, searching desperately for alternatives. Low-sodium diets, omega-3 supplements, coenzyme Q10. She ordered bottles of pills from websites with promising testimonials, spent what little money she had on organic vegetables. She tried gentle exercises from YouTube videos, moving slowly through stretches designed for heart patients. Nothing worked. The chest pains grew sharper, more frequent. They would strike without warning, sometimes while washing dishes, sometimes in the middle of the night. Each time she would freeze, gasping, wondering if this was the moment her heart would finally give up. Most days she didn't have the strength to leave her apartment. She would lie on her worn couch, television playing in the background, shows she didn't really watch. Her neighbors would knock sometimes, but she would tell them she was fine. She couldn't admit how scared she was, couldn't admit she was slowly dying with no way to stop it. She prayed, something she hadn't done much since Harold died. But as the days dragged on and her condition worsened, even prayer felt hollow. One afternoon in late October, Margaret lay on her couch scrolling through social media. It was mindless distraction from the pain and fear. She scrolled past photos of grandchildren, political posts, advertisements for things she couldn't afford. Then she stopped. The post was from Patricia Donovan, an old friend from the library who had moved to Vermont years ago. The photo showed Patricia on a hiking trail, surrounded by autumn leaves, her face glowing with health. She was 68 but looked vibrant, completely alive. Margaret remembered clearly that 2 years ago, Patricia had posted about her diagnosis: severe arterial blockage, the same condition Margaret faced. Patricia had posted updates about being scared, about not knowing her future, but now she was hiking mountains and looking healthier than ever. Margaret typed quickly, "Patricia, what happened? You look amazing. Did you have surgery?" Within minutes, her phone buzzed. "No surgery. I found something that saved my life. Call me." Margaret's hands trembled as she dialed. Patricia answered on the first ring. "Margaret, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm alive because of a tea recipe my neighbor gave me. Her name is Rose Chen. She's 94 years old and has the heart of someone half my age. No medications, no surgeries, just this tea." Margaret felt her excitement deflate into disappointment. A tea? After all the medical tests, the scans, the dire warnings, the answer was supposed to be tea. "Patricia, I'm desperate, but I'm not stupid. How can tea clean arteries?" "I thought exactly the same thing," Patricia said calmly. "When Rose told me, I laughed. But Margaret, I was out of options, just like you. I couldn't afford surgery either. So I figured, what did I have to lose?" Margaret listened as Patricia continued. "I started drinking it twice a day. For the first few weeks, nothing. I almost stopped. But then slowly things changed. More energy, less chest pain. I could walk without getting winded." Patricia's voice filled with emotion. 3 months later, my follow-up scan showed my blockages had reduced by over 60. My doctor ran the test 3 times because he thought the machine was broken. He said he'd never seen anything like it in 30 years. When I told him about the tea, he didn't believe me. Margaret felt a tiny spark in the darkness. What's in this tea? Hawthorn berries, ginger root, turmeric, and green tea leaves. You steep them with a touch of raw honey. That's it. Those are just normal ingredients. How can they possibly work? Each one has been used in traditional medicine for centuries, Patricia explained. Hawthorn dilates blood vessels and improves circulation. Ginger reduces inflammation in your arteries. Turmeric prevents plaque buildup and helps break down what's already there. Green tea has antioxidants that protect your arterial walls. Margaret's analytical mind processed the information. She had read about some of these in her internet searches, but dismissed them as alternative medicine nonsense. It's not magic, Margaret, Patricia continued. These are real compounds with real effects. Nobody talks about them because there's no money in it. Pharmaceutical companies can't patent natural ingredients. The whole system is designed to push expensive procedures because that's where the profit is. But your doctor confirmed it worked? He did. He was shocked, but couldn't deny the results. The scans don't lie. And I'm not the only one. Rose has given this recipe to dozens of people. I've met at least 12 who've had similar results. Margaret felt tears in her eyes. For the first time since Dr. Richardson's office, she felt something other than despair. Hope. I have nothing to lose, she whispered. No, you don't, Patricia agreed softly, and everything to gain. Margaret ordered the ingredients that same day. Her hands shook as she typed her credit card number, watching her small balance drop. Hawthorn berries, ginger root, turmeric, green tea leaves, raw honey. $63 she couldn't afford, but what choice did she have? The package arrived 3 days later. Margaret stood in her kitchen, ingredients spread across the counter, Patricia's recipe propped against the microwave. She prepared the first cup with trembling hands, following each instruction precisely. The smell was earthy and sharp. The liquid was dark amber, almost murky. It was bitter with a spicy kick that made her eyes water. This was medicine, not pleasure. Twice a day, every day, no exceptions. She set phone alarms and kept a journal, writing down how she felt, monitoring every change. The first week was brutal. Nothing changed. She still woke with crushing chest pain. She still couldn't walk without her heart racing. On day 5, she almost gave up, staring at the steeping tea and thinking about pouring it down the sink. But she drank it anyway, because what else could she do? Week 2 came and went. Still nothing significant. Maybe slightly less chest pain one night. Maybe a bit more energy one afternoon. But so subtle she couldn't tell if it was real or imagination. Then came week 3. Margaret woke up on a Tuesday morning and realized what was different. She had slept through the entire night. No chest pain, no gasping for air. She sat up slowly, waiting for the pain. Nothing came. Her chest felt normal. She walked to the kitchen and only halfway there realized she hadn't paused to catch her breath. Her legs felt stronger. Her heart wasn't racing. Over the following days, the changes became undeniable. She could wash dishes without sitting down halfway through. She could shower without feeling exhausted. Small things healthy people took for granted felt like miracles. By the end of the 2nd month, Margaret felt completely different. She walked to the grocery store, carrying her bags at a normal pace. She didn't stop every few steps. She climbed 3 flights of stairs without grabbing the railing. When she reached her door, she wasn't even breathing hard. She stood there and started crying. Not from pain, but from relief, from joy, from feeling alive again. But doubt crept in. What if this was temporary? What if it was placebo effect? What if her arteries were still blocked and she was fooling herself? Against her better judgment, she scheduled another appointment with Dr. Richardson. 2 weeks later, she sat in the same examination room while the technician ran the same tests. But this time, she wasn't afraid. Dr. Richardson entered holding her file. He moved to the monitor, pulling up her scans. His eyes narrowed. He leaned closer. His finger traced the images. Then he went completely still. Mrs. Hayes. His voice trailed off. He looked at the screen, then his tablet, then back. I don't understand. Margaret's heart pounded. What is it? Dr. Richardson turned to face her. His professional mask cracked. He looked genuinely stunned. Your blockages have reduced to 34, from 87 to 34 in 2 months. That's not possible. Not without surgery or intensive medication under medical supervision. Margaret felt tears spring to her eyes. 34, the tea had worked. "What have you been doing?" Dr. Richardson demanded, his voice sharp. "What treatment? Which specialist? What medications?" Margaret smiled, the first genuine smile in months. "I've been drinking tea." Dr. Richardson's face flushed red. His jaw clenched. "Tea? Mrs. Hayes, this is serious. You can't expect me to believe that tea cleared your arteries. That's medically impossible." "There's nothing else," Margaret said calmly. "Just tea. Hawthorn berries, ginger, turmeric, and green tea. Twice a day for 2 months." "That's absurd." Dr. Richardson turned to his computer, typing rapidly. "There's no scientific evidence that herbal tea can reduce blockage to this degree." "I don't care if you believe it or not," Margaret interrupted, her voice steady. "I know what I did, and I know it worked. Those are my scans. That's my body. Those are the results." Dr. Richardson scribbled notes furiously, his jaw tight. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But I still recommend medication to maintain these results." Margaret stood, feeling strong. "I'll think about it." She picked up her purse and walked toward the door without looking back. Margaret's transformation didn't stop with her health. Walking out of Dr. Richardson's office, she felt something she hadn't experienced since Harold died. Purpose. A fire demanding action. How many other people were sitting in their apartments right now, terrified and broke, told they needed expensive surgeries they couldn't afford? That evening, Margaret created a blog. She had never done anything like this, but she figured it out, watching tutorials until she found a simple template. She titled it, "A Librarian's Heart, My Journey Back to Health." Her first post took 3 hours to write. The diagnosis, the impossible cost, the desperation, Patricia's call, the tea recipe, the results. She included her scan numbers and wrote about doubt and hope, and the moment Dr. Richardson couldn't explain what had happened. She posted the recipe with exact measurements and added, "I'm not a doctor. I'm just someone who was out of options and found something that worked. Always consult with your healthcare provider, but know you have the right to explore every possibility." She hit publish at midnight. The next morning, her blog had 3 views and 1 comment. "This is dangerous pseudoscience." Margaret left the comment up. By the end of the first week, she had 20 views. By the second, 200. Then someone shared her blog on a heart disease support group. It started spreading. The messages began arriving. Robert from Ohio wrote, "I was scheduled for bypass surgery next month. I couldn't afford it, so I tried your tea as a last resort. My doctor just told me my blockages are down 50. He's postponing the surgery. Thank you for saving my life." Margaret read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. More messages came. Lisa from Texas wrote about her cholesterol dropping after 10 years of statins that never worked. Michael from Florida wrote about his blood pressure stabilizing. Jennifer from New York wrote about canceling her scheduled procedure. Not everyone had dramatic results. Margaret posted honestly about every outcome. She wasn't selling miracles. She was sharing real experiences. The blog grew. Within 3 months, 5,000 readers. Within 6 months, 10,000. People started a forum supporting each other, sharing modifications. It became a community of people dismissed by the medical system, people who couldn't afford treatment, people tired of medications that didn't work. But success brought unwelcome attention. One afternoon, her phone rang. Dr. Richardson's voice was cold and angry. "Mrs. Hayes, I need you to stop spreading medical misinformation online. You're not a doctor. You have no right to tell people they can cure arterial disease with tea." Margaret's heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. "I'm not telling anyone to avoid doctors. I'm sharing what worked for me. People have a right to know there are options." "You're giving people false hope," he said. "You're making them think they can skip necessary treatment. When someone dies because they drank tea instead of getting surgery, their blood will be on your hands." Margaret felt anger rising. "Doctor, I specifically tell people not to skip medical treatment, but people have a right to know about options beyond surgery and expensive medications. Options that worked for me and hundreds of others. You're playing with people's lives." "No," Margaret said firmly. "I'm giving people a choice. That's something you never gave me." You told me I needed $40,000 or I would die. You offered no alternatives. I found another way, and I'm sharing it. Silence. You're putting lives at risk, he finally said. I'm giving people hope when they have none, Margaret replied. I'm offering information. What they do with it is their choice. She hung up before he could respond. Margaret sat trembling. She had just stood up to a doctor, something she never would have imagined. But she wasn't the same person anymore. She had faced death and found a way through. The blog continued growing. Margaret posted 3 times a week, sharing updates, answering questions, featuring success stories. She was careful, always emphasizing she wasn't providing medical advice, always encouraging people to work with doctors. But she didn't back down from her truth. The tea had saved her life and others' lives. One evening, she read a message from Catherine. Thank you, not just for the recipe, but for showing me I have power over my own health. For the first time in years, I don't feel helpless. You've given me the courage to take control of my life. Margaret looked out her window at the sunset. She thought about how far she had come. From a terrified woman told she was dying, to someone helping thousands reclaim their health and hope. She couldn't reach everyone. Some would dismiss her story. Some doctors would fight against natural approaches. But she could reach some people, and for them, it made all the difference. Margaret had learned the most important lesson. Sometimes the answers we need aren't hidden in expensive treatments or complicated procedures. Sometimes they're right in front of us, waiting to be discovered. Sometimes all it takes is a simple cup of tea and the courage to believe when everyone tells you it's impossible. She had faced death and won, not because of doctors or surgeries, but because she refused to give up. And now every day, she helped others do the same.